All right, let's get going this morning, if we may. Good morning, Dr. Drost.
Good morning, Professor.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing well.
Good to see you, man. Glad to see you can get up this morning. He's going to ignore me now, go back to his bacon. Yeah. All right. This is our first breakfast of the year. We will have one more, Lord willing, this semester. A young lady by the name of Susan Marshall will be here on October 15th. She's a well-recruited business speaker that occurs. So, yeah, she's good. She's with a group called the Backbone Institute, and I have to share this with you. Their motto on their website, never grow a wishbone when a backbone ought to, where a backbone ought to be. I thought that was pretty good. So it's called the Backbone Institute. Susan will be with us. She does a lot of speaking on developing leadership within businesses. And how do you develop executive leaders and those kinds of things. So it should be a very fascinating presentation. And we'll see her on October 15th. So you might want to mark your calendars. That will be a Thursday, October the 15th. Today it's Eric Schoenberger. Eric is with Treasury Management Solutions with the bank. I have no earthly idea what that is.
I like to keep it that way.
Yeah, and he, Dr. Foster, do you know what that is? No? Okay. Well, we'll work on that today. He's in Wisconsin and Texas, which I thought which is interesting. And the other thing he does, he helps customers manage cash cycles safely and efficiently. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So we're going to learn about bank fraud and COVID-19. He's a graduate of UW-Madison. He's got his MBA in Management Information Systems from DePaul University. And he lives on the north side of Madison, so we're glad he's here with us today, Eric Schoenberger. We'll have him come speak, but let's have a word of prayer first, and then we'll begin. Father, we are grateful for the beautiful day that you've given to us, for the good weather we've had. Thank you for your protection on this place and on our community in general. Pray that, Lord, you might continue to do that. Father, thank you for the students that are here this morning. Help them to learn much. For those from the community who have joined us, we're grateful for that. Help us today, Lord, to be attentive to what Eric will share. Help him in what he says. Give him your wisdom, I pray. And Lord, I just pray that this might be a time when we can grow together, and we praise you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. Eric, come share with us.
Thanks, Steve. Good morning. Before we get started with the presentation, I just wanted to cover a few things off script. First of all, my understanding is that there's been almost no instances of the COVID-19 virus on campus. I'm just greatly impressed by that. If you read what's going on in Madison, you guys could certainly teach the students at my alumni a couple important lessons. Unfortunately, I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. Stay safe, keep your roommates safe, keep your friends safe, keep the faculty safe, keep everybody's family safe. This is, it's time to double down on these efforts. Keep doing what you're doing. It's really impressed with that. I'm also sympathetic that, during college, you have to go through this. And when Steve told me I'd be talking to the students, I thought, well, I'll try to make this as entertaining as possible because it's been kind of a tough year. And then I read the fine print and, saw that Steve asked me to speak at 7:30 a.m. about banking. And, I'll do my best. So I've been told I'm pretty funny. A lot of times it's not intentional, so that's worrisome. But anyways, great job. And I'll make this early morning banking presentation as entertaining as I can. Sometimes I think maybe here as much as any place else we can say things happen for a reason. So I'm up earlier than normal. I had to drive over here today, and ESPN went to commercial, and I turned on channel 27, not making this up. The news story on channel 27, and hopefully the students, you can find this online and review this clip. The latest COVID scam is actually directed at you, at college students. I hadn't heard of this before. It's a variant on a scam, and we'll be talking about this a little bit more from a business perspective, but it's a variant on a scam that's been around forever. Basically, they'll hack an email. It'll look like it's coming from your university, possibly from the faculty, about a job offer. Just so you know, you're never going to get a job offer from someone you don't know or unsolicited or via email. There is no such thing, so you should delete that before you open it. But basically the way this works is they're going to send you a check. They're going to ask you to buy gift cards or in some other non-refundable, non-recourse type solution, distribute money and keep the difference to yourself. That check is going to bounce and your bank account is going to be responsible for it. So that's the summary if you don't get a chance to review it. But what a coincidence that COVID scam directed at college students was. I just stumbled into that article today. With that, I think I'll get going. I'm not Mr. Technology, but this right button is supposed to do something. Steve, can you help me out? I guess I could probably just hit the button. Sorry, I hit enter. It's like it's locked up. But basically, the first slide, which we'll get to in a second, is who am I? This is more for the faculty, but if my name sounds familiar, I used to live in Watertown. I love Watertown. I just think it's a town. It's working out. Sorry about that. Thank you. It's a community that has everything. If you're new to campus, if you haven't had a chance yet, my friend Mike Kramer and Rich Kramer at Kramer Dairy, you got to go there. I forget which day has the fresh cheese curds where they squeak, but you got to do that. And if you're not from Wisconsin, I mean, talk about an easy way to get gifts to send home. I mean, Wisconsin cheese, come on, right down the street. So I love Watertown. If I had more marketable skills, I would never have moved, but I couldn't find gainful employment in the city, and the commute was pretty tough, so I moved back over to Madison. But I'm a big fan of this community. My wife is the assistant principal here. So why am I here to speak with you today? Like Steve said, I'm in treasury management. So to simplify that, I work with larger customers of Associated Bank. My products are disbursement, receivables, the overnight cash, and keeping track of that cash. And one of the aspects of that is fraud prevention. If you have money, people are going to try to steal it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. So the products and services I work with these larger companies helps to prevent that. Excuse me for 1 second. Couple ground rules before we get started. I'm not an attorney, and when it comes to fraud, these are going to be legal issues. You guys, I understand there's a lot of business majors in the room. Is that correct? Yeah. So you have or will be taking business law. I remember I had to take that class. You'll find that these matters generally are governed by the Universal Commercial Code. I'm not qualified to speak on that, but I'll do the best I can. Secondly, this is my presentation. I work for Associated Bank. I've gotten some information from Associated Bank. But this shouldn't reflect Associated Bank officially in any capacity, quite frankly, because I put this together without having it checked out by our legal and marketing area. I'd like to have this to be interactive. I'll try to pause for questions. Sometimes I get rolling, so just interrupt me. Raise your hand, shout something out. We'll pause. If you have a question, that's great. If I don't get questions, I'm going to ask you some questions. My answer might be I don't know. I mean, I'll answer any question you have, but I may not know. And again, I'm not going to give legal advice. So, the first question, I'll start things off is, I get this all the time. If the company I work for has fraud, and let's make it easy, let's call it check fraud. That's the most common type of fraud. Who's responsible for that? I guess my answer to you is, I don't know. I'm not an attorney, but I'll try to answer it. So without oversimplifying too much, the bank actually does have responsibility for check fraud. So let's say that you have a check, a fraudulent check. It's really easy to create, and there's websites you can go on and just create a fraudulent check. With checks clearing via image right now, technically you don't even need mic or ink on the bottom of the check. I mean, you can just print one off your machine. You can make it look like anything. Checks are always out there. You send out checks. Somebody at the company you're paying opens it up, it goes to the mail. People are seeing each check, and at the bottom of each check is the account number and routing number. That's all you need to produce a counterfeit check. Now, if that check clears your bank account, you didn't write it, you do have some recourse, the bank has some liability, but the consequences of that are not pleasant. You'll have to bring up one of these products we're going to talk about. You'll have to bring it up in the bank's time frame. I think that what you want to do is just protect yourself, and that's what this presentation is going to be a little bit about, is how do we best do that. So, Steve and I talked about, wrapping COVID into this discussion, and I've tried to do that. I gave a similar presentation to University of Wisconsin lacrosse students a few years ago, and I was actually kind of amazed. Even though COVID, there are some aspects of it, the fraud situation we're in today isn't that much different than it was 5 years ago. So, in the old days, the good old days, these were some of the threats. You younger people probably know more about this than I do. Trojan virus, keyloggers. Basically, the fraudsters, and this is all they do. And there's underground cooperation between these criminals. I mean, you can just go out and buy a package to allow yourself to hack in. I mean, they're sharing technology. There's technical support for fraud. I mean, it is a growth business, and I don't see any alternative other than COVID's going to make it worse. These are some of the more common things, but malware infecting a computer so that someone can take control of your computer, at least see what you're doing, capture your login information. Corporate account takeover, they use malware or phishing emails to gain your login information, and they can act as you, likely on some banking software, to move money and monetize those funds. The whole goal of these people is to steal your money. It's difficult, but it happens all the time. Billions of dollars each year are lost by companies and individuals to fraud, and there's a couple of main ways this is done. The first thing, phishing. Somehow, the fraudsters need to get access to your system. It's done mostly two ways. One, they're going to get you to click on something you shouldn't, install software on your computer, and then have access to viewing everything you do. Or two, they're going to send you an email, get you to click on something, generally it's a false website, to look like a website of a service you're using, and enter your login credentials. The end result is they want to be able to take over and act as you to conduct illicit activity. So phishing, it's a play on words, right? Phishing with a PH, but you're throwing out a line and you're getting the fish to bite. Again, that's mostly via email. There's a couple different categories. So spear phishing, that's pretty common, where you're at work, you get this email from the owner of the company. Hey, Jim, we have to send $10,000 immediately to this vendor. I forgot all about it. Can you help me out? Anytime, if you're in a role now or in the future, just remember this. If you're asked to send money anywhere via email, you have to treat that with suspicion. These emails look exactly like something coming from your company. Or, with this new scam, they'll look exactly like something coming from MBU. You will not be able to tell the difference. Whaling, again, trying to hack in, get the upper echelons login credentials, or be able to spoof them. This SM, that just means that this, instead of coming over email, it's coming over text. Phishing, they will also, it's called social engineering. There's an aspect to this. They'll look to find your credentials or credentials of employees online, Facebook, social media type sites. They'll decide what you're into, then they'll try calling you and getting you to divulge information you shouldn't by acting as a vendor or partner that you are used to using. All right, this is going to be hard to see. Steve is going to send out this presentation, so there's this is just some numbers. This is from the most recent 2020 study where they're surveying large companies. A couple takeaways from this slide. First of all, like I said before, check fraud is still king in terms of number of fraudulent attempts. Check fraud is number one, and it's going to be that forever just because it's so easy to perpetrate. Now, that's from a number of transactions. From a dollar amount, the biggest worry lately is wire fraud. Now, the reason for wire fraud, first of all, larger dollar amounts typically will move via wire, but wire transfers also have an aspect to them called an irrevocability of settlement. That's why if you were to do a large transaction like purchase a house, typically that closing is going to be done with a wire transfer because once that wire arrives, there's no way to get it back. When a fraudulent check is presented, like I said, okay, now you can go to your bank and that check might, within a certain time frame, that check might be able to return. Same thing with ACH. What is ACH? ACH is automated clearinghouse. If any of you get direct deposit for any reason, even maybe your tuition type money, that is an ACH transaction. It's another electronic transaction. It's growing faster. There's been some same-day settlement capability, which has it set up better for the fraud world. But ACH, you can return ACHs within certain time frames depending on the characteristics of the ACH. So like I said before, I'm going to stop for a second and invite any questions you have. All right, well, I'll keep pausing, but yes, sir.
Has there been a rise in check fraud because the COVID package that come out?
Good question. Yes, there has. All fraud, and we'll see some of this, has risen because of COVID. Now, why is that? When I started, I was with clients last week, and I just mentioned, in fact, Spuncast, which is right here in town. I was with the CFO, and I just, hey, I'm going to be in Watertown, and I'm going to be giving this presentation. And he asked me, what is it about COVID that was making this fraud more prevalent? And honestly, I couldn't answer it. And I've done some thinking and looked online, and I think the remote work aspect of COVID, it just has to increase emails. Everybody's emails are clogged up in the business world right now. I'm getting, 200 emails a day. So when you have that level of email and you're constantly working on it, I think it's easier for the fraudsters check fraud is a little bit separate. It's not, you're not using this this login information. But even so, with emails, you can still have check fraud. This did happen to a customer of mine within the last year. They sent an email. They're a beer brewing entity. One of their vendors that sells the hops, or I'm not sure which one it was, hacked. The vendor got their email hacked. Okay, so the criminals are monitoring everything this vendor did. Hey, here's an invoice going out to my client, who I'm not going to name. What we'll do is we'll generate a duplicate of the same invoice, and then in highlighting, we're going to say, our office moved. Would you please send the check to this new location? Right? And again, you're doing like 20 things at once, keeping your email clean. You get this. All right, I don't think to ask about it. I go to my AP guy, I say, all right, same city, we just have to change the address. It's a P.O. box. These guys sent out a check for $35,000. Check was intercepted, deposited at another bank, and because it was the customer that changed the instructions, bank has no liability. That was a loss. Now, there might be some liability on the bank's first deposit side, but and I don't know that. All I know is we couldn't do anything for the customer. So we'll get to this later, but it's a good question. Now, I think in the case of check fraud, this is take the moral arguments out of it. A lot of people aren't hiring right now. Especially in service jobs. The ability to perpetrate a fraud is a growth industry. I'm not suggesting anybody do it, but specific to check fraud, I think COVID isn't. It's an opportunity for people that especially have more time on their hands. It's pretty easy to produce these fraudulent checks. That's why I think check fraud is growing. I shouldn't say I know. On the electronic fraud, I'm relatively sure it's the emails that are allowing We're creating an environment where people are just less lax. And it needs to be the opposite. You need to double down. These things that we saw from 2015, they haven't changed, but they have increased in frequency. That's a good question. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Besides what you just explained as far as check fraud, where you're getting something to send a check somewhere else, what other kinds of check fraud gives you fairly common?
Well, so just the most basic kind is I'm a criminal. I can purchase this online. Let's go back to what I said before. And every check you write has your account number and routing number on there. There's a lot of people that see that. At the vendors. I don't get in the weeds too much, but for instance, when you get a credit card bill or a phone bill, you ever notice how there's a PO box on there? Okay, you're almost certainly sending that to a bank. You don't know that. You're sending it to a bank, and it's a receivable service the banks sell that I sell called Lockbox. Basically, our staff gets your mail, opens the mail, and deposits it so that you don't have to deal with it. And we're generally locating these in Chicago and areas where the mail comes in quicker. So we're getting these deposits. Well, that's a lot of people that don't work for your company. You don't know who these people are, and they are looking at these checks. And again, every check has that amount. All they have to do is jot down the account number and routing number. They can sell it somewhere. So now if I'm a criminal, I have that information. I just go on a website. Here's one. So this one I loved. I didn't love it, but criminal gets the routing number and account number information, goes online and orders checks from a check vendor using that information to debit. They didn't pay for the checks that they shouldn't have. I mean, that's a whole other level of thinking right there. They get those checks, but it's just so easy to get, once you have the account number and routing number, producing the check's a joke. You can outsource it like they did, or just print your own. Now what do you do with that check? I'd say, well, go to what's called a money service, one of these Canadian loan type places. Go to a bar, I don't know, but go somewhere where, they cash checks and they're not going to put that much scrutiny on it. That's the most basic type of fraud. Just creating a fake check, it's going to hit that account. When are you going to notice? You're going to notice, months later probably. You're not going to notice till you reconcile the bank account, and people don't. So in a corporate environment, when we're talking big money, we recommend, if possible, you should reconcile your bank account every day. And electronic banking allows for that. You got yesterday's activity every day. If I reconcile and I catch that fraudulent check early, I can return that and I can get my money back. That's not the way it works in reality. People reconcile on a monthly, or they're behind right now. They don't have the staff. They don't catch these frauds for months later, and then that's not a good outcome. Great question. Any other questions? All right. So if I was a professor and I was going to ask a question for an exam, and I don't know if that's what the plan is here, but if it was, one of my questions would be, what is the most prevalent type of fraud? And check fraud would still be the answer, and it's by a long shot. And the reason why is because it's so easy. Okay, so knowing some of these things we had before, there's some best practices. When we talk about check fraud, and this is not for consumer banking. I don't work with consumer banking. I work with the much more interesting corporate banking. These are products on the corporate side that I sell. First of all, if you're in business and you have money, you should at least be aware of it. In my opinion, you should always have a product called Positive Pay. What is Positive Pay? Positive Pay is a check fraud prevention product. In this case, me, the bank, I've set up a database tied to your bank account. Before you cut any checks, you upload the check number and amount combinations to this database. In an electronic fashion, when these checks clear each day, we electronically bounce that check number and amount combination against what's in the database. And if they don't match what you told us you had issued, then the system will email you. You'll go out, you'll be able to see an image of the check, and you'll be able to return it before it ever clears. Actually, it clears and then is returned, but it's within that time frame that I described before. No questions asked. You just say, I didn't write this check, it's out, you got your money back, no fraud occurred. There's a similar product on the ACH side. I don't know if you're aware of this, but if I have ACH, again, that direct deposit is the most prevalent example. If I have an ACH and I debit your account, now there's rules around this. I can't really just pull money out of your account without signed authorization. But if I do, there's nothing on the bank side for corporate accounts, actually for consumer accounts either. Nobody's looking at that, right? This happens at 2 in the morning when we're running these batch jobs. So with ACH debit, for the commercial entities that have a lot of money, to protect them against that, we have a product that allows you to list, I won't go into all the details, but basically you tell us who can debit you for what amount. If there's, much like Positive Pay, if there's anything outside those parameters, we email you and you have an opportunity to review. On the commercial side, you always have 48 hours to return an ACH debit. So ACH, that's called ACH filter, sometimes it's called ACH block, and Positive Pay are the 2 primary bank fraud prevention products. They've been around forever, at least as long as I've been doing this. And if anything, COVID has made them more important just because of the uptick in the fraudulent activity. What else can I tell you? I'm a big believer in minimizing bank accounts. Again, I'm talking corporates here. A lot in the old days when stuff was cheaper and rates were higher, so you're getting more credit towards your services, you'd have a different bank account for everything, right? I might have, my wire's coming here and I deposit there and I'm cutting checks out of here. I don't think that's the way to go. And part of the reason is these fraud prevention products have a cost to them. If you can minimize bank accounts and then lock that bank account down, that's the best practice. Other best practices, I like check scanning because then I have my staff that's working with incoming checks and make sure those are done well. We already talked about online banking. The corollary there is you've got that information, you should be reconciling on a more frequent basis. Don't be shy feel free to interrupt at any time, or I'm going to keep asking questions. Basically, this is what we just covered. This is the Positive Pay. We can also match on payee. That's something I'll let. It's an option. Payee. So with check with pay Positive Pay. Remember, you're giving me your check number and amount combinations. As the company, you're the only one that should really know this, right? So the odds of a fraudulent check, getting through, because they're not going to know what check number, 500, what amount that was for, vice versa. So that'll happen. But what it doesn't help protect against is if I intercept a check as a criminal, and the process is called washing a check. Although my thought has always been, why alter the check? Why not just create a new one? It's so easy to do. We've already covered that. But anyways, in that case, the check number and amount does match, right? So it's a check you issue. So that's out there. Well, we can also match on pay. Not a problem with pay, but just pay uses intelligent character recognition. So it's always we're going to have a high degree of accuracy for the amount of the check and the check number. There can be a little variance with the payee name. I still think it's important to have this protection. It's just you will have to pay more attention to exceptions. You don't, if you have an exception and you don't tell us it's okay to pay it, we're going to return it. I should have started with that. Positive Pay is not you saying, hey, return this check. It's actually the opposite. It's us saying, look, this doesn't match what you sent us. We're going to send it back, and you have until 3 o'clock to tell us not to. Well, your vendors feel a little bit upset if you're returning your checks on a regular basis. But, a little bit of attention and sending good data, this product works slick. It's been around forever and works really well. We already talked about ACH block and filter. Let's talk about COVID. Again, I don't see it as this rash of new schemes, although I will tell you the whole college thing, student thing, freaked me out. And so, let's all pay attention to that and make sure that we're not clicking on anything in an email that we don't know who sent it. Even if it looks, if it just seems too good to be true or it doesn't seem logical, just delete it, right? And if you do click on something, and you're not sure, call someone. This is just a picture from the Department of Justice website. When the DOJ is putting up a special hotline and saying, we have a problem. To me, this is just evidence that COVID is having a real impact on fraud. I just don't know that the characteristics of the fraud have changed that much. This is kind of hard. It's even hard for me to read right here, but this is just some of the reporting that I got out of an article about the fraud. This is just from January to August. So these are there's a lot of scams going on, but we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars just in a few months. The instances of fraud have definitely gone up incredibly. No surprise there. All right, so this is more of a new terminology. It's going to sound similar to what we were already talking about, but this is the catchphrase of the day: business email compromise. And kind of the steps are here, but again, we're going to, I'm the fraudster. I'm going to figure out who sends emails, who has authority, like to get stuff done, what these emails look like, and then I'm going to get in the middle and I'm going to send these emails. That email, the example I gave before, like we got to pay somebody now. Okay, that's one of the characteristics of this social engineering that we talked about, a sense of urgency. Another characteristic is a emotional response. You might get an email and say, hey, this is your cousin Jim and I'm in prison and I need bail money. I mean, there's going to be a sense of urgency, an emotional response. These people, they've done the studies and they've probably contracted with psychologists to understand how to best do this. There's enough money involved to make that work. And this was my point. This is from a fraud prevention security website, which is in one of my appendix. It's a free email newsletter. So if any of this stuff doesn't bore you to death and you're interested, Sticky on Security, SOS, and they'll be in the presentation. I sign up for it. I mean, even if you just want to, just be scared of some of the stuff that's going on right now. It's a great website, doesn't cost anything, and they talk about scams, and they get a little technical, I won't lie to you, but it's free, and I think it's pretty interesting reading. But business email compromise grows 667% this year. Whew. Now, part of that, if you ask me, is just that this is a new terminology and it wraps a lot of stuff in there, but without a doubt, COVID is increasing fraud, and we need to be more diligent than ever. I won't go through these, but these are just some tips on how to avoid being sucked into this business email compromise. Vendor impersonation fraud. I want to talk about this because right now this is my greatest concern. Over the last 12 months, this has been my greatest concern. First of all, I'd argue this is just a subclass of business email compromise. But basically, what this is, well, it's like with the brewery I talked about, right? A vendor is going to give in. Now, they're not going to do it that way. That was just a weird example I wanted to talk about with check fraud. Usually, almost always, this is going to be electronic. They're going to produce an artificial email that looks just like one of your vendors. You're not going to be able to tell the difference. And in that email, it's going to say, we've changed banks. And so now we need you to send this ACH payment, this credit card payment, this wire transfer, although wire transfer isn't typical with vendors. We need you to send it to this new account number and this new routing number. Okay? If you take one thing away from this, if you're working in a business environment, professors, if you want to put an exam question on, any request to change payment instructions via email needs to be verified. It needs to be verified over the phone, and you do not call any phone number that's on that email. Okay? Now, these are vendors, right? So, hey, IBM, big companies. You're going to call over there. You're going to verify this request. You're going to probably get somebody you've never talked to. Maybe not. Maybe you have your go-to person, some major vendor. Great. If you know them, recognize their voice, I'm cool with that. But typically, you're going to get some clerk. You don't know who they are. They don't know what you're talking about. You need to verify who you're talking to, right? And maybe, especially if you're to use any number on the email, which I wouldn't do. I can't even think of a scenario where I do that. So what do you do then? All right, then you get them to do the work to pull the last invoice and give you specific information from that invoice. Don't take anything for granted. Payment instruction changes, first of all, it just shouldn't be happening very often. When it does happen, it has to be verified as thoroughly as possible. And then I would say, look, go to your boss, go to whoever has some authority, get them to sign off on the change. Do not make this decision yourself. Another customer of mine, the chief medical officer of a pretty decent sized hospital in Wisconsin, right? They hacked his email. They found out he was moving. And it's coincidence, but they, because they're monitoring everything that's going on. They sent in a request from spoofed email, say, hey, I'm moving, I need my direct deposit to go to a different account. The AP or HR area, I'm not sure which of the company, contacted ADP, made the request, and this is a chief medical officer. We're talking, it was more than $10,000, and that money's gone. So again, any instruction changes via email, first of all, should be taken with the highest degree of suspect nature that you have, and B, you need to do everything possible to verify. And still, I would get a coworker to sign off. So again, some more tips here. I don't think we'll hear anything different than what I've already covered. Just checking the time here. So another pause for questions. I know you're all sitting there thinking, boy, I thought he was gonna make this funny, and it just sounds like banking stuff, but I'm doing the best I can. Here's some tips. Boy, I'm gonna have trouble reading this. I'm sorry, let me just kind of read this to you. So these are just some best practices that I found that I thought I'd share with you. Oh, I'm sorry.
If emails are so prone to fraud, as far as we've changed our address, send checks, and whatever. Would any legitimate businesses truly use email as that for? Because I know the IRS will never send letters, the IRS will never call you, stuff like that. Do other private businesses have certain chosen methods?
Yeah, they definitely do. In fact, one of the things that there's been, and this is great for fraud overall, over the last 10 years, there's been a definitive shift from paper-based transactions to electronic transactions, right? So what does that mean? Well, we're not cutting nearly as many checks, although it's not falling as aggressively as they've let us believe the last 10 years, but it's going way down. So when you're not sending out a check, you're also not sending out invoice information, what you're paying, et cetera. That information will, and same thing like on the receiving side, they're not going to invoice you via paper. So email is integral to business today. I mean, unfortunately, yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's simply not something that's going to work. You're going to get emails. 99% of them are probably going to be legit. It's the 1% that isn't legit that's going to have huge monetary penalties if they're not held correctly. So yeah, it'd be great to say that, but everything's via email. And COVID, back to my point before, everything that wasn't emailed before now probably is. Because what do you do with people working at home? I mean, you can do some business over the phone, but the whole in-person thing's done. Great question. Any follow-up or any other questions? All right, well, excuse me while I just kind of read these high points to you. So this talks more about technology. In fact, you know what, I'm having trouble seeing this, but I break down the more important points on the next couple of things. One of the facts, and I'm not Mr. Technical guy, although I have a little background there. There's a lot of technology out there. You want people on approved devices. Like I can't go onto my network. Like I can't connect my personal laptop to work. Okay, kind of common sense stuff. If possible, I want to connect through a VPN. I want not only ID and password, but I want something else to shore that up. They're going to use the term here is multi-factor authentication. So, this is something that on the banking side, we've had for a long time. And the FFIEC is, think of it as a bank regulator. They come out and tell us to do stuff, and you better, darn well do it or you'll get in trouble. Multi-factor authentication is one of these things. So, that, it's not, when we're talking about banking and moving money, that's not like, checking your Hotmail account, right? I mean, this is some serious stuff. So it's not as simple as an ID and password. It's got to be something else. Multi-factor will mean like, in addition to ID and password, and the password is something it's something you have or who you are. Those are the things. And by who you are, I mean like a thumbprint. That's who you are. Something you have. See that thing in the middle there? It's hard to see with the arrow in the middle going to it. That's a token. Basically, that's a token that is assigned by the bank to an employee at one of our clients, and that thing has a 6-digit number that changes every 60 seconds. So it's not just, hey, this is ID Eric, my password is banking. I also have to have this thing in my possession and put in that number at that point in time. And if I wait, it's going to time me out. I'm not going to be able to log in. So that's multi-factor. Oh, by the way, the tokens, that's like, 1999 technology. We're putting that on smartphones now. So, because you always have your phone with you. Oops. A version of the token the multi-factor authentication is out of band. So you still have ID and password. You still might, what you still might have like who you are, biometrics. But then there's another. So if I'm on the internet, so the internet's the main band. That's where I'm getting my banking information, or I'm going to initiate my transfers. There's another channel that is used to verify it's me. Now, most typically, you're seeing this now via text message. Okay, and I'm sure you've all seen this before. First time I signed in, even an email account, and remember, email being hacked is a huge deal, right? We've already covered that. So I signed in my email account. From a new computer. System knows that. It knows that there's no cookie or whatever authentication on that computer. It's going to say, all right, fine. Put in the 6-digit code I just texted to your personal phone number. So that's out of band authentication, and that's more stronger than just multi-factor. And something important there as well. Ooh. I put together a few more appendices. This actually is a bank document that I give to all my customers, some best practices. And then lastly is the Stickly on security, just so you can go to that website. This is just a recent article. So I think I'm a little bit ahead of schedule. Can we fill that time with perhaps some questions? Otherwise, I guess I could tell some jokes or something. So. Yes, sir.
So multi-factor authentication is a great tool if it's used.
Right.
Right, because a lot of times you give for various banks and various other places you do business with, they'll give you an option. So number one, it's always it's only a good tool if it's used, and it's kind of a hassle. It can be a hassle.
That's true.
So, but that was just more of a commentary. But secondly, not everybody does this. So, I mean, do you have any recommendations for, if a certain business isn't using MFA, that you say, well, I'm going to take my business elsewhere? Do you actually leverage that?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say, and we do this ourselves. Here, let me just go back a couple slides. The first thing I'll say is, right now it's guidance, so there's a little bit of flexibility there. What we do at our bank is, if you are just viewing only, if you have no file transfer capabilities, we will allow you just to do ID and password, although there could be a code anytime you go from a new computer, but we will not have you have the token or the out-of-band aspect to that. As far as if it's just not available, frankly, with this guidance, most banks I think do have it available. I mean, if you choose not to use it, it can't really help you there. I think you should choose to use it. I think it's more and more prevalent. If you're with such a small bank that doesn't have it, we're talking corporate banking now, and I'm not individual. That's probably not the right bank for you at all if you're an entity of any size. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, one more kind of a follow-on, but I was going to throw them all in at once, but I didn't want to give you too many questions at once. I think it would probably be useful, just as a reminder for all of us. It's not exactly necessarily in your specific area here, but just could you briefly talk about the use of passwords and usernames?
Sure. Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is the strength of the password, and that often on websites will be dictated by the way the website's configured. So you have to put in a random character. The bottom line here is, right, it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not the word password. It's not your son or daughter's name. It's if it's anything that can logically be found out, you're at risk. My personal belief is that, and again, usually the system you're using will dictate these terms, but passwords, again, protecting your email, even personally, right? You don't want that stuff out there. So personally, I think passwords should be 8 characters. I think they should definitely include some combination of capital letters, numbers, and those odd symbols that are allowed. Most websites will actually tell you what the strength of your password is as you are putting it in, and the minimum characteristics are usually pretty good, but remember they're minimums. You don't want to, why be the weakest password out there if there's anything of value in the system that we're accessing? Did you have another? Yeah. Now that's, I'll tell you how I do it, and this is being taped, so hi Associated Bank. But unfortunately, I keep a password protected spreadsheet. And I know it's not a best practice, but at some point we got to get work done. I can't spend half my day figuring out which password is which. I probably have to access 20 bank systems to do my job. So, and I keep a similar one at home. But, that is a encrypted spreadsheet that's password protected. In fact, for me to make any alterations, I've put a second password in, and I guarantee you that's not a weak password I'm using there.
I think what's interesting about what you just said, though, that especially the students need to hear, is you have a different password for every account.
Yeah, well, I don't think you can avoid it. It's definitely, you don't want to have the same password at all, but in today's world, because of the frequency with which you're changing the password, because of the different strength components of these passwords, some are 8 digits minimum, some are 4 digits minimum. You should be using longer passwords anyways. But to your point, where you're going with this, and I should have mentioned this, it's the risk you would take to use the same password to all your systems it's intolerable. It's unacceptable. So they need to be different. They should be different. Now, how do you manage it? I understand. I'm probably too cheap to pay for it, but I understand Google and a lot of these entities have these password wallets. I understand they work really well. I don't have them, and I think it's less likely someone gain access to that password wallet than they would to my encrypted, secured spreadsheet that I use. But I think it's kind of a wash. Yes, sir. Say that again. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I should have mentioned that. Sending money overseas, I don't have the numbers with me, but I have to believe that at least in dollars, it's material. Maybe it's not more than half, but it's definitely material. Any wire and those. So okay, how do you send money overseas? I guess you could put a bunch of stamps on a check and send it somewhere. Most ACH is not cross-border. I won't say all, but most ACH is. So it's a wire transfer, which has irrevocability of settlement we talked about before. That means you can't get your money back. Typically, they're large dollars, and really it's the only efficient way to send money overseas. So any request, it's a great point. I'm really glad you brought it up, and I'm disappointed in myself I didn't have it in here. If there's a request going overseas, you're intended. I don't care if you've sent the money before overseas. At least anything going overseas, extra caution there. Now, there's tools there. One of the things we do if you're going to be sending money overseas on a regular basis, typically what we do is we set up what's called a repetitive wire code. In a repetitive wire code, it's via signed form. It's paper technology we're using here. We use an authorized signer on the bank accounts to generate these codes that only go to this place. You as the wire initiator, all you can do is change the amount of the wire. That's a best practice. It's cheaper for you too as a corporate user. We charge you less for repetitive wire than for an actual wire. If you're sending a wire out somewhere else, just bank policy is there's going to be multiple people involved to approve that wire. And that approval is going to be done technically online through a multi-factor environment. And in our system, we are also going to call somebody back for every wire. Now, I don't know that all banks are doing that. We are a very conservative bank, and we are erring on the side of being conservative, and I think it's the best practice. But yeah, great point. That's where most of the fraud is done, because you don't have the rule of law. You don't, not to the extent we have in the U.S. It's just, because that's always the troubling thing for me is, how do you monetize the fraud? Somehow I got to take this paper check, which is worthless, or, this ACH or wire fraud, it came into an account. I got to get that out as cash. If I don't get it out as cash, if it's sitting there, eventually they're going to find out, they're going to return it. I don't have the answer there. I don't know how it's done. I know that with check fraud, like in Madison a few years ago, there were homeless people. And then we had this was like a fraud ring. I understand it was out of Chicago, I don't know that for sure. Come up, pay, create this fake checks and get homeless people to try to go cash them. They're small amounts, and then they'd get the homeless people to bring them back. I'm not sure exactly how I got on that tangent, but these people are tricky, and that's how they deal with monetizing it here. And probably only 2 out of 10 of those are going to succeed, right? Because you come into our bank, I'm not going to cash your check if you don't have an account there. Anyway, but if it's drawn in my bank, then I have limited options. So monetizing is a big deal. I think the reason the international is so much risky is I think it's a lot easier to do that, especially in countries that are more corrupt. Again, they don't have a succinct rule of law, but you can do it here. It's just easier to do it there. And go try getting your money back from overseas. There's no way. So great point, and I apologize for not including that. Who else has a great point? What else have I missed? Let's have those questions. No? All right. Well, I don't think I've ended way too early, have I, Steve?
No, you're good, Eric.
All right. Well, my dad was a college professor. I don't have more respect for any job in the world. I taught math and computer science for a while, and I sincerely thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you all today. Again, the activities you guys are doing here really impresses me. I'm not impressed with what's going on in Madison, and keep it up. Steve will forward my contact information. If you have any questions, hey, I'll leave you with this too. Banking is a really good job to go into, I think. One of the things I like about banking is, good or bad, but we're not producing products, right? So, and we're necessary. Economy's up, economy's down. Really hard for banks to make money right now, but, I've got a job. This COVID stuff's changing the world. I'll tell you, I'm never going back to the office full time. Never. Tomorrow, after I drop off my car or my truck that I haven't started in like 3 months and have that worked out, I'm going into the office to pick up, it's called a work-at-home kit. As far as I know, I will be working at home for the rest of my career. Banking seems to me to really fit well in that environment because we're not producing products. Most of what I can do, I just do on a computer. The second thing is business banking, working with companies. It's great. You get a lot. You get to entertain customers. You go golfing with them. We work. Don't get me wrong. But commercial banking is a pretty good thing to go into. And something with like treasury management, what I do here, there's like a whole certification process, and there's not a lot of expertise up here. I'm not bragging when I say I don't worry about a job. If I get laid off today, I'll have a job, in a couple weeks from now. Now, to be fair, I had to move to Texas, and then I went to Chicago to get that experience. But treasury management is an excellent area to go into. I'm an econ major. I think undergrad economics isn't really, you actually don't have a command of that subject matter until you get a doctorate or a higher level. And banking is an actual great alternative for anyone that's an econ major. In fact, when I'm looking to recruit people, I look for econ majors because I think econ is, if nothing else, it's a great way to demonstrate your analytical abilities, and that's what we need in treasury management and in banking as a whole. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Eric. We will have our next breakfast, Lord willing, October 15th. Mark that in your calendar. And I will send out this presentation to the faculty. I'll send it out to my class, and it'll be available to others if you would like it. So just let me know. All right, have a great day.